writing, or you've written Total War. There's a new book as well. This man knows, ladies and gentlemen, so much. You've just been, as you said, in Ukraine. Let's talk first about, I just want to go back a couple of weeks, the ICC saying that if Benjamin Netanyahu comes to a country, he will be arrested. America disgusted with this. But it seems that Starmer, the dictator, the man who doesn't listen to his people, rather agrees with it, which is hardly surprising because he's a left-wing human rights lawyer, isn't he? What's your take on the Benjamin Netanyahu arrest
My take
warrant?
is that Jeremy, the Policy Exchange, which is a think tank for those people who don't know it, based in London, did a report on it, and Kemi's Attorney General, I think it's Lord Wolfson, if I understand correctly, has given his opinion on it, and they both say that it wouldn't stick. So there is no grounds and no ability to arrest him here for what he's being charged with. I think there is effectively a legal argument over the small print. David Lammy saying today that, he would be powerless to stop it. I think that is an incredibly stupid and foolish thing to say.
Well, hold on a second, that's shocking. Can we just take a second? David Lammy said something foolish and shocking. What, the man who a few weeks ago said that the climate emergency was more important than major conflicts across the world. I'm embarrassed that man's our Foreign Secretary, Bob. I really am.
I can assure you, I think there are many people who feel exactly the same way. I think it is absolutely appalling, and I think there's lots of stuff that's going to come out on the Chagos Islands over the next couple of weeks as well. My own bet is that there's going to be evidence appearing that the Russians were involved in manipulating, and that the government effectively fell for a Russian influence operation.
Donald Trump, before we talk about the area very quickly, he's talked about the Chagos Island. He doesn't seem very keen on this current government. He's saying he'll reverse it straight away, which could be a godsend, because Mauritius, this is just a ridiculous decision.
It is a ridiculous decision. I think it's a combination of things. I think there's Russian manipulation. Yeah. I think there's Mauritian politics. I think there's a lot of wokeness in the Foreign Office. A friend of mine who used to work there, and before the election, they had won and persuaded David Cameron and others that actually this was a really bad idea and that we shouldn't go anywhere near this. This is sovereign territory and it should remain so. I think there are some people in the FCO who have a very hard left agenda, which is frankly not in the national interest of this country. Why on earth they're working in the FCO, that's another question that you can, I'm sure, debate with your many listeners. But so I think it's a combination of incompetence on our part and maliciousness on part of others. And it may be that the Chinese were involved in stirring as well, who knows?
Before we talk about Ukraine, thousands returning home to South Lebanon as the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire takes effect. Will that ceasefire work? Is it a good thing? Does it raise hopes of a Gaza ceasefire? Thoughts on that, Bob?
Right. If the Israelis are happy with this, then I think that is a good thing as well. They have a right to defend their people. Hezbollah and Hamas both use their own people as effectively human shields, and the responsibility for the civilian killings lying overwhelmingly with Hezbollah and Hamas. And actually, I've become much more sympathetic with the Israelis because I think the case is overwhelmingly the case that they are trying their best to avoid civilian casualties, and Hamas and Hezbollah are trying to create civilian casualties in order to pressure Israel. And I think what Israel did with these little transmitters, all the stuff they blew up for Hezbollah people, I mean, if that's not targeted attacks, I really don't know what is. And actually, well done the Israelis. They've stood up to Iran, they've stood up to these revolting terrorist outfits, and frankly, they're winning. And I think we should take note that standing up to thugs and bullies and terrorists is a good thing, an important thing, and we should be doing more of it for our folks.
Does that get lost, though, in a rhetoric of, understandably, if you look at what's happening in Gaza, nobody wants to see what's happening. Nobody wants to accept so much loss of life. But the fact of the matter is, and I got slated for saying this the other day, this is a democratically elected government surrounded by terrorist groups funded by the mad mullahs of Iran. That's a fact, isn't it?
It is absolutely a fact. And the people who celebrate the deaths of innocent women and children in Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip, not only Hamas, not only Hezbollah, who use those deaths, but also Iran. And I think it is a good thing for the world that Iran has been cut back to size, and probably under Trump administration will continue to be cut back to size.
It'll be very interesting to see what he does. Well, it'd be very interesting to see what Donald Trump does about the Chagos Islands. Very interesting to see what he does about Iran. Very interesting to see what he does about the whole Middle Eastern crisis. Do you think he can make a difference? Yes or no, Bob?
Possibly.
Possibly. 3 months in Ukraine. Very quickly, sum up. What's happening there?
The Russians are making slow progress. As we know, they keep threatening nuclear war. The Ukrainians are on the back foot. We've got to support them more because the Ukrainians are fighting to keep the Russians enclosed. And if the Ukrainians lose, the Russians will be after Georgia and Moldova, and then they'll come for the Baltic states, which are NATO countries. I'd rather be fighting the Russians in Ukraine, using the Ukrainians as proxies, rather than our troops be fighting them in the Baltic republics.
What do you say as a proponent, and I'm on your side completely, we've only got 30 seconds, what do you say to the people who have war fatigue, who say, listen, this country's on its arse, this country can't afford doctors and stuff like that, why are we giving billions away? I'll say that's because it's our war, it's not just Ukraine's war, right?
If we lose it, it's going to get a lot more expensive. And if nuclear blackmail becomes the normal diplomatic discourse, we're going to have to pay an awful lot more, billions and billions more for defence, because we're going to be living in a much more dangerous world. So actually, this is relatively cheap given the potential costs in future.